I'm your host, Taylor Ann Carpenter, and welcome to The Talk Chamber, a production of the Greater Memphis Chamber. The Talk Chamber is the podcast for the latest on the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. Our guest today is CEO of Contemporary Media and Editor-in-Chief of Memphis Magazine, Anna Travers. Anna, I'm so excited to have you on the Talk Chamber today. So thanks for joining us.
Taylor Ann, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so grateful to be here and excited to get to know you and share a little bit about myself.
Thanks. So you were born and raised here in Memphis, correct?
I was not born here, but I was raised here. So I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. My mother was an academic. She was a professor at Rhodes College. And my father was also a teacher. So they were both English teachers. She taught Shakespeare and he taught at Houston High locally. And so they were in Charlottesville as she was finishing up her doctorate when I was born. And then we moved here when I was just a little kid for her first faculty position at Rhodes College.
Awesome. Well, we love when people come to Memphis and stay in Memphis, which we'll get to in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But before we really get into that, could you give us just a brief overview of your career?
Absolutely. So I am the CEO of Contemporary Media. I'm also the editor-in-chief of Memphis Magazine. If people don't know Contemporary Media, or CMI as we're sometimes known, we are the locally owned independent publishers of the Memphis Flyer, Memphis Magazine, and Memphis Parent. We also produce a range of other titles for various clients and partners, so we stay very busy. So I run the day-to-day over there, from staff to finances to editorial to sort of future planning and vision. And it's been really an incredible opportunity and a great group of people. So I've been doing that for, coming on 6 years now. It'll be 6 years this summer that I've been in the CEO position, and I've been with the company for about 7. And my journey to CMI was very roundabout. I had a winding path that led me to where I am now, but that is what I do.
So what initially led you into journalism?
Sure. So again, very roundabout. I started actually when I was in high school with an interest in journalism. I went to St. Mary's for all 12 years, from first grade through 12th. So my classmates and I all knew each other very, very well. And when I was at St. Mary's, I became very involved with the high school newspaper, the Tatler. And I had a real interest in and passion for journalism. I have always consumed a lot of journalism, going back to when I was pretty young to be consuming some of the journalism that I was consuming. So I started editing the Tatler my senior year and really, really loved the work, from assigning stories, writing stories, editing other people's work, even page layout. There were not as many people who were as passionate about the school paper as I was, so I did a little bit of everything and sometimes a lot of them. As I said, I've always consumed a lot of journalism. I was an only child, so I read a lot. I read everything that was in the house, so I was, reading my parents' copies of the New Yorker and the Atlantic going back to when I was still in middle school, and just had a real interest in following what was going on in the world around me. When I went to college, though, I decided to focus on literature and did that through college, and actually went to graduate school to study literature. I focused on English Renaissance poetry. But then when I found myself back in Memphis and started looking around for what my path was going to be, I ended up meeting the people who were working at Contemporary Media at the time. This was back in about 2016, and just really admired them and the work that they were doing, the community involvement that they had. So I got to know them better and better, and eventually an opportunity presented itself.
Now, did you leave Memphis to go to college, or were you here?
I did. So I went to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore for undergrad and was an English major there. And then I went to Harvard for graduate school. I was actually in a PhD program and left about halfway through. So I left with a master's and took a beat to kind of reconsider what I was doing with my life. And during that pause, I was back in Memphis, and Memphis really got a hold on me when I was back here. So I ended up deciding to really reevaluate what I was doing and decided to just let the master's be enough and went looking for what my next path was going to be.
And that's then how you found contemporary media.
In a manner of speaking, there were some other positions along the way. When I first moved back here, I was 25 years old and needed to make rent. So I worked some jobs that were jobs that you do to pay rent. So this, that, and the other thing. But in a roundabout way, that is how I found my way to contemporary media.
So let's then dive into what you do at Contemporary Media. So what is the goal and the purpose of Contemporary Media and your role as CEO? You've talked a little bit about that, but let's dive a little deeper into that.
Sounds great. So at CMI, through everything that we do, our goal is really to talk about and amplify what makes Memphis distinctive. We're also really invested in driving Memphis forward through what I would call collective imagination. Of course, as a news and media outlet, we are focused on covering a wide range of issues in the city, some really wonderful and inspiring. Others are aspects of life in Memphis that can maybe use some reevaluation, but we are always trying to think about what are the stories that make Memphis so magnetic, so distinct, and what can we do to amplify the stories that help Memphians to think about opportunity differently, to think about our future differently. And of course, as journalists too, many members of my team are also focused on holding power to account, on thinking about what is going right here in the city and what is not going right. Both sides of that are equally as important, and we explore them in different ways in our different publications. But really, I think that what makes the work as a whole so worth doing for me is that this city is so much worth fighting for, and I think that we have a chance to do that in our pages every week and every month.
That's awesome. I love what you said about the collective imagination. I think that's a really interesting take on storytelling and journalism, and it's super important for our media to be that voice for the people and be the ones to help us, figure out what's right and what's wrong with our city and how we can improve and what already is so great about our city. And you already said that Memphis is great, and I think you and your team are just in a unique position to be able to do that.
I hope so. I think we have a real opportunity and a real platform. And I do think that there's something to be said for people reading stories about their peers, their colleagues, their neighbors, and realizing what is possible here. Whether that be a story about a local business or a local activist or just someone who has led a really beautiful life. I think that we read those stories, we consume those narratives, and it gives us a different angle on the city that we're seeing every day.
Definitely. So as we move on, let's talk about each publication. You've got Memphis Magazine, Memphis Flyer, and Memphis Parent that are contemporary media publications, correct?
That is correct.
Could you give us a little information about each? What's, the theme behind each one or what the beat is?
Yeah, I would love to. So Memphis Magazine has been around since 1976. So it's our longest running publication, coming up on 50 years next year. So we're thinking forward toward that. Memphis Magazine is a monthly. It is a glossy. It's long form, kind of culturally focused stories, lifestyle stories. We try to make Memphis Magazine really beautiful, and also really designed for slow reading, for deeper appreciation. So it's kind of the magazine that you subscribe to, and hopefully it sits on your coffee table all month until the new one comes. Or if you're like me, you have a stack of them about 6 inches high.
I have, I don't know if you can see it. I have a few on my desk right now.
I love seeing them out in the world. It really brings me a special joy. So that's Memphis Magazine. And again, there's like a wide range of content in Memphis Magazine, from stories about individual people and profiles to stories about businesses to restaurant reviews and arts and entertainment and culture pieces. So really a wide breadth. The slogan of Memphis Magazine used to be, back in the early days, "We cover the town." And I like that. I think it's still true. Memphis Flyer, I'm sure listeners will be familiar with as well. The Flyer has been around since 1989. It's always had a little bit of a renegade spirit. So I've learned that back in the very, very early days, when the Memphis Flyer was first founded, that some of the boxes on the streets were just kind of deposited there one night. And people woke up the next morning and boom, there was a local free alt weekly now that no one knew was coming. I guess a few people knew it was coming, but because there were ads in it. But yeah, they just kind of went around and boom, there it was. So I kind of love that. The Memphis Flyer is still free. It's still weekly. It's still in print. Of course, all of our publications are also very active online. But we think that having a print product is important. For the Flyer, since it's free, we find that the print product is especially important in a community like ours, where not everybody has the same access to technology. So we want to make sure that anyone and everyone who wants to pick up the Flyer and read about what's happening in Memphis can do so. So we also partner with several other newsrooms in town to bring their stories into print. Some newsrooms don't have print products these days. We do. So we'll sometimes partner with MLK 50 or the Institute for Public Service Reporting at the university to bring their really incredible textured reporting to a print readership. The Flyer is, of course, known for its real community-driven focus, for letting people know what events are coming up. I think a lot of people historically have picked up the Flyer to find out what bands are playing that weekend, and that's still true. It is also kind of known for being a little saucy, a little spicy, and we like that about the Flyer. Memphis Parent, as one would imagine from the name, is focused on parenting, and not just parenting, but family and opportunities for family engagement, entertainment, tips, events. So those are our core publications.
So you do more than just these 3 publications, though, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So what other kinds of magazines are you working on?
Yeah, so in addition to our core publications, we also do a range of custom publishing for a variety of partners and clients around town. So we will work with a group or an organization or a company to help bring their stories into print and to a wider audience. So we partner with clients in a host of different ways. Of course, we partner with the Greater Memphis Chamber and publish the Greater Magazine, which we love that partnership. And we've been able to research and report some really fascinating stories for the Greater Magazine, which we have loved doing.
And we've loved working with you guys.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, y'all are great clients. We are also lucky to partner with groups like Tresvent. So we publish their magazine, the Collierville Chamber, South Haven, various alumni magazines. And we also do coffee table books. So that's something that I don't know that people know about us as well, but it is a really important part of our business, and we're always looking for more partners. Actually, the way that I found my way initially to contemporary media was that I was on the client side of a of a book publishing contract that CMI had with my employer at the time. I was working for Mueller Industries, and Mueller was coming up on its 100th anniversary. So CMI was hired to produce a centennial anniversary coffee table book. And I found the process just fascinating, loved the people, and it started the relationship that I developed with the people who hired me.
That's awesome. That kind of goes back to your journalism roots in high school.
Yeah, I saw that project and I just sort of glommed myself onto it and was like, okay, I'm here to help. What do you need? And luckily it was the start of a really great relationship.
So at Contemporary Media, you've led publications like Memphis Magazine and Memphis Flyer, which tell the city's stories. So how do you see storytelling contributing to economic growth and community pride in Memphis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this goes back to a little bit of what we were discussing earlier about showing people what's possible via the stories that we share. So whether that be seeing another person's success in a business or seeing an art project that someone has put together, or just reading about the way that someone lives and has constructed their life or their home, I think that it makes the community feel a little bit smaller. I think that it makes us all feel a little bit closer together and like we have more insight into the people around us, into the community around us. We're always hoping to inspire people to get more involved and motivated by just seeing what their peers are up to. I think that so often it's easy to get stuck in the busyness of our day-to-day lives, our jobs, our homes, our kids, our pets, the car maintenance, the house, all of that. And it can be easy then to lose sight of the incredible things that are happening around us. And what we're trying to do is keep that front and center, to make us all feel a little bit more connected and a little bit more aware of the work that's being done here.
In a city like Memphis, there's so much going on. We have so many nooks and crannies of industries and just events and happenings that it's hard to keep up with it. And so it's really great that we have publications that try to spotlight that and try to, make it all a little smaller for us, make all the busyness kind of come together in one place where it's not so chaotic and busy. We see what our peers are doing. We see what our community is doing. We see what's out there.
I mean, even just on the small scale, I mean, I think that we all can get a little bit overwhelmed by how many possible events there are to go to and things to do and exhibits to see. So, I mean, this is just a tiny example, but each week we'll offer a range of 5 things to do this weekend, or the Flyers event listings and curation that give you a sense of what's really worth spending your time on, because this is a city with so much activity, and that's a wonderful thing, but I think it can also feel a little overwhelming at times. So I know I often look to those guides that we put together to just give me a little bit of a sense of how I actually want to spend those limited hours between Friday afternoon and Sunday evening.
Oh, I can tell you, I'm there all the time looking to see what's going on and reading those stories and trying to just, dive deeper into Memphis, because like we've said, there's just so much here and so many hidden gems, so many just great things in our city that are sometimes hard to hear about. Mm-hmm. So when I have the opportunity, I try to go and look, and I'm there all the time.
That's great.
But that brings me to the question, how do you and your team decide which stories to amplify, and what makes a story undeniably Memphis to you?
So, I mean, it's sort of a pat answer, but I think you know it when you see it. I mean, if you've been doing this work for a while, you start to just have a sense for that's a story, or, something that just seems curious or seems odd. Someone who seems inspiring, someone who seems to be lighting people up in a positive way, or just stories that people can't stop talking about, can't stop paying attention to. So on my editorial team for the magazine, we're always thinking about balance, thinking about how to produce a total narrative that feels like it's got some light, some dark, some fun, some challenging, always trying to be authentic. But yeah, I mean, I do think that you know it when you see it. I think if you consume a lot of media, you have a sense of what you want to read too. And honestly, some of it comes down to that, is just thinking, I would read a story about that person. I would read a story about that exhibit or company, or frankly, probably not. So yeah, I think that a lot of it really does just come down to instinct. And a lot of it too comes down to collaboration. I mean, my team is very, very collaborative. We're in constant communication with each other. We try to pay very close attention to what's going on online, what's going on social, what conversations people are having, and just keeping our ear to the street and wanting to make sure that we know what is of interest and what is of concern to people around us.
And leading contemporary media means guiding a team that shapes how Memphians see our city. So what's your leadership style or approach that you found works best to inspire your team? You've talked about collaboration. What else?
Yeah, I mean, this one is really very simple. It's work with brilliant people and listen to them. I don't think that it needs to be a whole lot more complicated than that. I have so much respect for every person on my team, and all of them have amazing ideas. Many of them have been at this for longer than I have. And each of them has a different perspective, a different background to bring to the table. So they're all just so talented and so brilliant. And we try, again, to just stay in very close communication and to really listen to each other. And I think that when that's the environment, some good ideas will come out of it.
That's awesome. Great. As CEO, you're steering a media company in a fast-changing industry. What's one challenge you've faced, and how did you turn it into an opportunity for contemporary media?
So this one almost makes me laugh a little bit because I took this job in the summer of 2019 at a time when, of course, the landscape for media companies, for small local companies, for anybody with a print product was becoming more difficult than it had ever been. And then less than a year later, the pandemic broke out with all of the challenges that brought economically, in terms of our logistics, in terms of our ability to interact with each other. So there have been a lot of challenges. It's honestly difficult for me to point to one, because I think that so much of the nature of the job that I have is weathering challenges on a near constant basis, which I know does not sound like fun, but if you have a bit of a puzzle-solving brain, as I do, there can be some real reward to it. It's not an easy thing to do to lead a local independent media company in 2025.
I don't doubt it.
It's not an easy thing to do, but it's a very worthwhile thing to do. And I firmly believe that. And I think that the results are borne out when our stories make an impact in the community, when we get people talking, when my colleagues are pitching incredible ideas, when I see the publications and they're beautiful and I would read them whether or not I worked where I work. There have been many challenges, though. I mean, from COVID to rising print prices to, some revenue shifting to more online Google ads, that sort of thing, and less to local media. Many challenges, but many opportunities as well.
So what's one piece of leadership advice that you'd give to someone just starting out in Memphis, whether it is in media or another field?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if someone's just starting out here, really especially in Memphis, because I think it's very possible to do this in Memphis, I think work to build connections. And I think that that is the most critical thing. It can be difficult to do, but I think that in Memphis it's a little bit less difficult than it might be in some places. I've found that a lot of people in this town are pretty willing to take meetings, even with people that they don't know very well, who just are looking for advice, looking for connections. I would say get yourself in front of as many people as possible. If you have the opportunity to go to breakfast events or any sort of professional development type curricula, like take advantage of those opportunities and just get in those rooms and get to know people, because maybe more so than in other cities, this is so much a town where knowing people will get you a pretty long way. That's how I found the job that I'm in right now, and it was not through filing an application. It was through having a long series of conversations with the people who hired me and getting to know each other and honestly finding a fit. It was not something where there was a job posting and I put in an application and they came back with an interview. Not to say that that doesn't work, and not to say that I haven't hired plenty of people that way, and many of them are excellent. I love it when someone comes my way who I have never heard of before and they are amazing and can light the world on fire. That's amazing. But I would say the biggest piece of advice that I would give is to get out of your bubble and just try to get to know as many people as you can, because you never know what's going to come of it.
I 100% agree. I would argue that the vast majority of business leaders here are willing to sit down with you and talk to you, and, whether that's because you're trying to find a job or you're, new and you're trying to become a better leader, or you need mentorship, whatever it is. I think the vast majority of leaders in the city and in our business community are willing for that and willing to do there and, guide you along your way.
I think that it helps that Memphis is a small enough town that you don't really want to burn bridges here or be mean to people for no particular reason. Like, I think that a lot of us just have a sense that you want to put your best foot forward in each situation and just trust that something good will come of it. I know I've taken meetings with plenty of people who are, not necessarily looking for a job, not necessarily looking for anything other than advice and a connection. And I'm happy to do it just because that's what people did for me. And you never know where that person's going to be in 10 years. I mean, I might really need something from them. So yes, there's a little bit of a kind of what goes around comes around attitude to it, but also just wanting to put back into the world what I got from it.
Definitely, and it's in my experience, it's been some of the most fruitful conversations and professional relationships to come. Is just those reaching out and sitting down with somebody that you may not really know or have heard of, looking for that advice.
Yeah,
so that's
so true.
That's great. As we mentioned earlier in this episode, you grew up in Memphis, you went off to Johns Hopkins and Harvard, and then chose to return here. So what was it about Memphis that called you back?
So I've got to say, I didn't come back on purpose. That was not my design. So I didn't return on purpose, but I did stay on purpose. So when I was in my mid-20s, I came back to Memphis for what I thought was going to be a very brief stopover and figure out what my next move in life was going to be. And that was 16 years ago. So it's been a while, and I seem to live here now. So I think that that's now very much on purpose. But when I first came back, to be honest, I was resistant to the idea. And I think that's important to say. I mean, I grew up here in Memphis at a time when, at least in the world where I was spending time, the mentality was that if you were a reasonably smart and reasonably talented young person and you had the opportunity to get out of Memphis, you should absolutely do that, and you should probably not come back. And that was my plan. I was fully invested in that plan. I was on that journey, was not planning to come back. Some life things happened in my family, and I found myself back here. And I was, again, initially resistant to the idea, but despite myself, I noticed that the city was evolving in really interesting ways, and that it didn't feel like a failure to be back here, which, I hate to say it because it sounds so negative, but when I was growing up, the mentality was very much that that getting out of town was the route to professional success. But when I was living here again in my 20s, I really just started to notice that the city was on a different trajectory than I had remembered it or than I had realized it was on. And I think I also started to become aware in a new way that it was more possible to affect change in a city of Memphis's size, of Memphis's scale, than in bigger places with maybe more hierarchy, more professional infrastructure. What we were talking about before of being able to actually get in a room with people that you might find interesting, I don't think that is as viable in most other cities. And it is viable here. It was for me. And I'm not somebody who grew up with a lot of ins. My parents were educators, so I did not have a lot of connections when I moved back here. I didn't have a lot of economic privilege, but I still found that if I was interested and if I was willing to do the work, that people would talk to me, would maybe even work with me. So I just noticed that was an option here, and I felt really inspired by what I saw transforming in Memphis, because I started to notice that there were more people around me who started to share a sense that this was not just a city to grow up in and then leave, but that it was a city to really plant one's feet in and stay. And I felt really called to do that.
I think I hear some of the same sentiments, though I feel like in the past few years, I've been hearing and seeing a little bit of a shift in young adults who are in their, either graduating high school and going to college, or graduating college and trying to figure out where they're going to be in their career. I feel like I've seen a shift in people who are coming back to Memphis and choosing to come back to Memphis and choosing to stay in Memphis, but might have originally at that high school stage said, no, I'm leaving, I'm getting out of town and I'm not coming back. But now they've kind of reevaluated, and I think that just is a testament to kind of the growth that we're seeing in our city, which brings me to my next question. You get to hear so many stories from people all across the greater Memphis region. From your vantage point, what's one thing our city is doing right to foster that growth?
So I might push back on this question a little bit. On the one hand, I think that it is very possible to get yourself in a room with people in Memphis who might be able to help guide you on a professional path. But I also think that there are some real challenges here. And, I think in some ways I got lucky. I think that in some ways I happened to meet the right people at the right moments with the right opportunities. I do think it's very possible to build a really wonderful life and a really wonderful career here, to start a business here. I think it's a lot easier to do that if you have certain advantages to begin with. And I think that, we do have to stay mindful of the fact that there are many obstacles here for many people, whether it be economic disparity, I think that the climate for certain small businesses is hard right now. I see a lot of small business owners struggling, and I don't think that it's always an easy city. I think that Memphis is a really wonderful city. I love Memphis very, very deeply, but I don't think it's an easy city. I think in some ways it's a hard city, and I don't say that as a way to undercut the more positive things that we might say about Memphis, but I think that for a lot of people, the path here is thorny, and I think that there are certainly supports in place for people who know what they want to do, especially if they know the right people, especially if they have at least somewhat of a foundation to build upon. But I do see a lot of small businesses struggling. I see entrepreneurs struggling, and I think that that's not to say that the chamber isn't doing positive things to uplift small businesses and that other organizations aren't too. But I think that, there's still so much economic inequality here. There's still so much disparity here between people who have privilege and people who do not. And I think it's sometimes difficult for folks to change their lot in life in a meaningful way. I do think that some of that has shifted, but not always as much as I maybe would have predicted 10 or 15 years ago. I think that it's very possible that things will move in a hopeful direction. But I do think that for a lot of folks here, life is harder than it probably should be.
Right. And I mean, it takes the work of, the city and the community and the people who have that power to start working towards that. And I know there are a lot of groups, and the chamber included, who do things to contribute to that. But there's definitely work to be done still, as there are with many other cities across the country.
Of course. No, I mean, the problems that Memphis faces are not unique to Memphis. I think it's always important to say that, because I do think that Memphis can have an underdog mentality, and I think that sometimes the underdog mentality is part of our charm, but I think that sometimes the underdog mentality can veer into almost a victim mode. But at the same time, I mean, I think that Memphis does have a lot of historic challenges and a lot of work left to do.
Yeah, and that's, the goal is to try to make Memphis greater.
Absolutely.
So that's what we've got to do is, work towards those things in a variety of different tactics.
Yeah.
But kind of going on that underdog mentality, media plays a big role in how cities are perceived, both, locally and nationally. So how people look at Memphis. How can the chamber and businesses work with outlets like yours to amplify Memphis as a hub for innovation and a hub for growth, and as the city that many Memphians are proud to call home?
Yeah, so I mean, I do think that providing stories, providing data can help us understand better where we are, and to extrapolate from that data and from those stories where we might go. I do think that in many ways it's possible to move faster here than it is in other places, and I think that that's a positive thing. I think that there's a really strong community mindset that exists here, and I think that on an individual and personal level, people are really very wonderfully willing to support each other. I know that we're generalizing here, but I see people really showing up for the businesses and for the people that they care about and that they want to see succeed. And sometimes that's not enough, but often it is. And I see us really trumpeting the people who who are making it work. So I think that sharing those stories and sharing that data goes a really long way.
I agree. I mean, one thing that I hear in my position is, these businesses, small and medium, these entrepreneurs coming and, saying like, thanks so much for putting this story out because it's helped them in so many other ways. But one of the best parts is I'm putting the stories out because they've done something that's incredible, and the community needs to be behind it because they've done something that's cool.
Right.
So it's great that we have outlets like yours to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we really do try to make sure that the news and information that we're sharing is authentic, but authentic does not mean a crime blotter, right? I mean, we will talk about overall trends in crime and policing and safety, but we're not a crime blotter. By the same token, we're also not going to be able to cover every ribbon cutting. So what we're trying to do is find some middle ground where we can share a sense of what the broader trends are and what the broader forces at play are, to help people understand the context for every detail that they might see on the nightly news.
Moving into the local journalism scene and the vitality of it, we've discussed that a little bit. What's one way contemporary media is working to keep Memphis informed, and why does that matter to you personally?
Gosh, I mean, I think that's the definition of what we do. We're trying to keep Memphis informed on so many levels, whether it be what is going on this weekend and how can we have a fun time, to what are the environmental justice and social justice stories that we need to be paying attention to. For me, I think that what drew me to journalism in the first place is a sense of wanting to be grounded and connected in the world that I live in. And for me, at least, that happens via storytelling. It always has. I'm a literature person before I'm a journalist, and I think that those things play into each other in really natural ways. I think that we understand the world through the stories that we tell about it. And so we're trying to help Memphis feel connected and feel aware and feel motivated and feel empowered by understanding what's happening here on a narrative level. That's really the whole ballgame for us.
So another kind of big thing that I see in media as it evolves is social media. And it's becoming a big player in how Memphians get their news and their stories. You've said that your team even watches kind of what people are talking about on social media to keep up with those stories. So are there other ways that you see social media complementing or challenging traditional media in the sense of broadcast or print? Or
Well, so I wouldn't see it as challenging a media outlet like ours so much as, we're on there too. So it's more just a natural evolution, or maybe not a natural evolution, but an evolution, to be certain. We would not be able to exist, I don't think, in 2025 if we weren't pretty active on social and online as well. So, it's been a long time since the magazine was founded and since the flyer first landed on the streets, but we've been online and on social for a very long time. And the flyer especially has a really robust following on all the social channels. So I would see us as being just another player in that on that court of social media, and definitely complementing the work that we're already doing. I think it's just how people are consuming their news, and our goal when it comes to digital and social media is to make sure that they're consuming as much of it through us as possible. But for us, it's just a different way to reach our audience. The the mission of the publications that we have, whether it be Memphis Flyer or the Memphis Magazine, what we're trying to do is just reach people. And whether that be people are picking up a print copy of the flyer or subscribing to Memphis Magazine, or whether it be someone reading our posts on Instagram or directing to our websites or getting our newsletters, it's all an opportunity to reach those people. So we aren't picky about how they come to us. We just want them to spend a little time with us.
So there's one more hot topic in media that I wanted to touch on real quick, which is trust in media. How do you think local outlets can build and maintain trust with their audiences in a fast-moving world?
Well, I think you don't want to focus on being the quickest in town. You want to focus on being the most thorough and authentic. And I think that people notice that. None of our publications are the most likely media outlets in town to break a story. Not that we don't break stories, but it's unusual that we're the first one to publish a scoop. It is much more our beat that we will get to a story a little bit later and with a longer lens and with a more complete view. And I see that as being a really thoughtful approach and a good way to let people know that what they're reading when they read our publications is work that we've worked on thoroughly, that multiple people have looked at before it gets published. Everything that goes up has been read not just by the person who wrote it, but by actual editors. And we're working to make sure that the stories are fact-checked, that that assumptions are being challenged, that that we are not necessarily the quickest, but that we are putting information out there that you can rely on. And I think that it helps too. This is a difficult thing for someone else to implement, but I think it helps that we've been around for a while. I think that we have the real privilege of having long-lasting relationships with our readers. I mean, many people have been reading the Memphis Flyer for their entire lives. As I said, the Flyer was founded in 1989. I was born in 84. I don't remember a time before the Flyer. I certainly was not like consuming local news. I was a very news junkie kind of kid, but I was not consuming local news when I was 4, right? So a lot of people have known these titles for their entire lives, and have built real lasting relationships with the publications and with the individual authors. There are bylines in the Flyer and in Memphis Magazine of writers who have been writing for us for decades and who know their beats incredibly well, who are incredibly well sourced. And I think that readers can sense that.
I think, it's important to have the news and get this, the story out there, but I would say it's more important to have the full story and have the facts and have something that's truthful.
There are so many fast-moving stories, and there are other outlets in town who do a fantastic job of covering them. I, of course, read all of those outlets' coverage and pay close attention to it and respect and admire the work that they are doing to keep citizens informed. And again, not to say that we won't ever break a story, but that's not really our mission in life. I mean, the Flyer started as a weekly. Of course, now that the internet exists, we are publishing content on a daily basis, but our roots are in a longer, more thought out mode. And I think that continues to be part of the ethos of what we do.
Anna, we have time for one more question. You've shared so many insights and we've had such a great conversation. So to wrap up, what is one story or anecdote about Memphis that you'd love for our listeners to carry with them?
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a plug for our work, but Memphis Magazine just put out a cover story that I actually wrote about Coffee Black, which is an incredible local business that has global roots and is really plugged in all over the country and all over the world. And what they're doing in terms of the coffee supply chain and building an equitable and an honest supply chain is really, really beautiful. And I loved getting to know the folks over there. It's also just really outstanding coffee, which I drink a lot of. So I really greatly enjoyed researching that story and interviewing the folks over at Coffee Black. I think that they are a really inspiring model for what people can do in Memphis with an entrepreneurial spirit and with a vision for what the future might be. So that's something that I would point to.
Awesome. Anna, thank you so much for joining me today on the Talk Chamber. I'm so glad that you were able to take the time to sit down with me.
Thank you so much, Taylor Ann. This was so much fun.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode of the Talk Chamber. We are so glad you're here. To sum up what we heard from Anna today, first, Memphis is a special city. And second, work to build those connections. They are vital in a city like Memphis. If you enjoyed this episode or learned a valuable piece of information, share it with a friend or a few. Subscribe to the Talk Chamber to keep up with the latest on the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. Follow us on social media at Memphis Chamber, and we'll see you next time.